Hi, Val, and welcome today.
Thank you. Good to be with
And
you.
yes, and hello to all the viewers out there. I'm here with Val today, and we have decided to have a conversation about the current situation, the crisis we are facing right now. And we have a question we would like to address, and that's about how can psychosynthesis or a spiritual practice help us in this crisis? And if you should say a couple of words about you, Val, where are you coming from?
Thank you, Ken. So first of all, I'm really glad that we can have this conversation and that all of you are tuning in because it's so important to be in the conversation right now. There's so
Mm.
much happening in our world, inner and outer. So just a little bit about who I am. I'm Val Salitkar. I'm the co-founder and director of Psycho Spiritual Institute, and we work in psychosynthesis. A little bit of my background: I come from eco psychology, deep ecology, and ecotherapy, and now bring the spiritual psychology of psychosynthesis into my work.
Mm.
And so I work both with individuals and I also run coach training programs and a lot of other wonderful workshops and speaking opportunities for us to like dive in deeper to what's going on. So in a nutshell, that's a little
Mm.
bit about me. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and we know each other through psychosynthesis. I've been aware about your institute in Florida, and I also had the privilege to teach there one time.
Yeah.
And it was really good. And if I should say a couple of words about myself, I can say that I'm a trained psychotherapist and have been the former director of training at the Norwegian Institute of Psychosynthesis. And I've done a lot of workshop within meditation, developed different psychological programs. Yeah, I've been involved in this type of work for the last 20 years or so. So I'm very keen about investigating this crisis and also offer some perspectives about how should we perceive what's going on right now? How can we help our community coming through this crisis, which affect us all economically, psychologically, and spiritual also perhaps. So, if we should give the viewers a little overview about what we are going to speak about, we will say something about how we deal with this on a personal level. How do we go through this crisis with our type of background? I think some of the viewers could be interested to hear some of the tools that we're working with, some of the perspectives. But we will also like to give some perspectives about the moment we are in. What type of perspectives do we hold, and which are most valuable in order to keep the mind in the light and not disappear into fear and worry and anxiety, because
Mm.
there's a lot of that going on out there.
Yeah.
So if I should ask you, Val, how do you manage this crisis?
Yeah. This is such an important question because we are all holding so much right now. Yeah. So first, I want to invite everybody who's listening to just if you are in a space where you can just really tune in, and we welcome you to be present with us for this conversation
Mm.
because it's really important, and we're as curious as you to see what wants to unfold here. But we know that this is where we need to be right now, is in this inquiry. And so part of how I am holding this global crisis slash invitation,
Mm.
because I see it as both.
Yeah.
Yeah, is to be in, in psychosynthesis we always talk about the loving observer.
Mm.
So that we're both experiencing what it is that we're experiencing, and we're the one noticing what it is that we're experiencing from a space of love and acceptance with what is, and
Mm.
curiosity to really
Mm.
explore what's here for us to understand. And so how I'm moving through each moment and each day, if I what I feel when I feel things arising in me, on this very personal and human level for my friends or friends of friends who have already died or are suffering from this virus, and many more things that are happening in our world,
mm,
is to bring myself into that deep presence and just breathe and sit in presence as the loving observer,
mm,
to hold both the pain of our world, which is very real right now, right? And we're not here to like push that away in any way. We're here to actually welcome it and all that's here for it. So I do that exactly. It's like, what is here? So going into the inquiry and the curiosity into what it is that I'm experiencing right now personally, and being with that and looking at what it has to teach me in that moment, and also opening up to what wants to emerge from this experience, right? Not in spite of it, but because of it, what's coming through for me right now. So there's both the honoring the pain of our world and being in the inquiry and curiosity for what wants to come through this experience.
mm,
And I'm also holding not just my personal experience in this, Ken, but our collective experience. So in the questioning of like, how are we then as a global community holding our collective trauma, like this something we've never experienced in our lifetime, where an entire world is experiencing something similar simultaneously. We're all
mm,
tuned together to this. What is that like, to hold that and also to recognize what's possible from
mm,
this, what wants to
mm,
emerge.
mm.
So that's how I'm doing this right now, is allowing myself to feel really deeply, be present with what is, honoring what is, and opening, being receptive to what wants
Mm,
to come through.
mm.
What about you?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail there. I think you managed to yeah to formulate what the practice is all about. It's about being very present and aware to whatever arises, And when I noticed myself each day, I can see that when I'm too much on the news, I can feel my energy level is becoming lower. I feel tired. So I really restrict my sources of information because I notice how it affects me. There is some kind of a mass emotion out now, stirring up a lot of fear, anxiety, nervousness, anger, and I'm very aware of how it affects me, and I'm trying to be centered exactly by the way that you presented, by being a loving observer to it, having my morning ritual with the meditation and aligning myself to source, all these type of practices, and then also using the same technique of the bifocal vision as we do in psychosynthesis, trying to understand the problems that we are facing as a collective, as a community, and not being, vague about it or trying to wish things away. It is a very serious situation we are in, and it really demands a lot of compassion and also clear thinking. And on the other hand, I really agree with you. It's so important also to listen to the soul in this, and to the emerging purpose of what's unfolding here. I don't believe this crisis is coincident. I believe there's something here that we can learn about. And what I can see is that while humanity is now struggling to breathe when we are affected by the virus, then the planet, nature, is starting to breathe. All the pollution and all the effect we have on a daily basis on nature is now gradually disappearing. So we give the planets now some weeks, possibly some months, without a very without the usual impact of all the pollution that we affect. So these type of thoughts and the practice of meditation, and of course it's also important to stay in connection with people around, family, friends, the community, and building a coalition of like-minded who in some way is a coalition of people who practice holding the mind in the light and not yeah, become too immersed in all this fear and mass emotion.
Yeah, yeah, you made some really important points. You know, I'm going to speak to one of them that just came up for me too. Well, actually, two. So one is that, this experience of the entire global ecosystem taking a big, deep breath.
Yes.
Really. And it's so interesting, coming from an ecological perspective, right, where everything is interconnected. It's like we, as part of this larger body of the earth, right, allowing our sense of self to expand to ecological self, right,
Mm.
holding us here, we are inviting ourselves to take a deep breath.
Mm.
It's like we're moving so fast and out in a lot of ways out of control, very disconnected from our sense of self.
Mm.
And so we're inviting now this pause, this collective
Exactly.
pause,
Yeah.
to really tune in to who we are.
Mm.
What's really going on here?
Mm.
There's a lot of questions here. And so on that level where we're listening to the news and we're feeling these emotions rising up, and I'm feeling it too. Like I have a friend of mine who just sent a message out, from New York, who's like in so much fear right now, like feeling trapped inside of his place, and he's sick and he knows people who are sick, and there's these numbers are going up, and what it's doing is it's really reconnecting us to each other and allowing our hearts to break open to a deeper sense of compassion,
Mm.
right? The ability to feel with one another,
Mm.
and also to feel with ourselves. I think that we, in general, we live in a world that teaches us to run away from feelings that are uncomfortable,
Exactly.
right? Or from things that don't feel good, right? So we're constantly looking at ways to escape. We're like a nation of escape artists.
Mm.
So now we are forced to look at ourselves. We have to take a look at what is this? What's going on here?
Mm.
And the whole world has to look. We
Mm.
all have to tune in right now. So it is bringing us into a deeper sense of connection and compassion and curiosity, and like all of that is here for us right now.
Mm. Mm. I really like what you said about the ecological system and tuning into that nerve in nature. I spend a couple of hours in nature every day. I'm so lucky to not be trapped in an apartment inside the city, but live out close to nature. And I think it's so important for also the physical health to strengthen the immune system. Of course, eating healthy, but also spending time in outside or getting some air, some sun, if it's available. Because I think what you point to is that we have been we are so used to be in activity with with a lot of stress, a very strict and scheduled day, and now it all stops. There's this big pause, and it creates a vacuum. And now it's up to us. What are we going to fill into this vacuum? Because it is actually a vacuum. And we can allow all the subconscious forces from the lower unconscious to well up and overwhelm us. And we know that if we allow this, then it will also affect our immune system. Our immune system is very influenced by our psychological state. And we know that stress will release stress hormones and lower our vitality. So we are not that good at fighting off the virus. So that's why I believe that it's so important that we also are strengthening the mental health atmosphere by positive thinking, by having a larger view of what's going on, because it will affect our body and its ability to fight off this virus. So, and doing that will will make us able to connect with the superconscious and bring in all the new ideas and the new inspiration that we need exactly in this hour.
Yeah, and so important what you're saying. It's thinking about that and thinking about the personal and the transpersonal, and I feel like that we talk about this crisis, and we could say it's like this ecological crisis.
Mm,
As we look deeper into what that really means, we see that it's actually a crisis of perception,
mm,
right? A crisis of understanding who we are and how we relate to the world around us, right? And
mm,
that's this deeper invitation. Just as psychosynthesis is an invitation for us to look at who we truly are,
mm,
right? And we're invited to look at who we are as humanity right now.
mm,
Who are we as humans? What does it mean to be human? And so, we talk about in psychosynthesis that we have the personal self, we have the transpersonal or the higher self, or
mm,
sometimes the soul, right? And that is like this resonance of who we are. And so we move along in our lives, and sometimes we get this nudge or this feeling, and it's like something we must do, something we have to do. There's a call, like a call of self, right? That we, and it wants
exactly.
to be known, it wants to come through us. And so how do we get to know ourselves in a world where we're so layered with conditions and
Mm,
stories, and from the moment we're born into this world unstoried, but very quickly all these layers of how we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to be and how the world works, and our educational system, our social system, it's all piled on top of us until we're
mm,
like peeling away layers to try to find who we are.
mm,
We discover who we are, sometimes in those peak moments, right at the mountaintop, right?
mm,
Well, we had those moments where we're just like, oh yeah, like I feel interconnected with everything. Sometimes it's in those simple everyday moments, the way the sunlight hits the leaf, and
mm,
just shines and glistens, and all of a sudden you feel this deeper sense of connection to
mm,
you.
mm,
And sometimes, and I think maybe most often,
mm,
we find it in the dark night of the soul. We
mm,
find it in those most challenging moments of our lives. And I feel like, those moments show us who we are and
mm,
remind us that we are capable of creating anything. Sometimes those are the moments that actually reveal to us our path.
mm,
So when I look at this on a global level right now, it's like humanity is experiencing a dark night of the soul.
mm,
We're invited right now to turn toward that experience and sit with what is this? Fear is feedback,
mm,
right? Emotions are a way for us to tell ourselves to pay attention, right? What's coming up? There's something here that's saying that
mm,
wants our attention. And if we allow ourselves to be with this, and this is sort of this perception shift, right?
mm,
Okay, there's fear here. Like I'm afraid. I feel like the pain of our world. I'm suffering with other people. Like I see this happening right now. What does this have to tell me and teach me about
mm,
who I am
mm,
and how I want to show up in the world right now?
mm,
Who are we? What does it mean to be human at this time? And how can we show up as a collective to make new choices, to engage
mm,
our will to be who we truly are, as we peel away these layers of things that are not working, the ways that we're showing up that are based on fear and panic and suffering and not truly centered in ourself, right? So I think that there's so much information here in this moment when we allow ourselves to be with that as well, as a way to kind of move through the fear and see it as also a
mm,
gift.
mm. And saying this, I really also see that in some way we are experiencing a mass experiment in disidentification, because we all now is in a total different situation, and we need to step back. We need to disidentify from our normal habits, what we normally do on a daily level, because we have created this new situation. And the more we are able to, and this disidentification is a very prominent concept within psychosynthesis. It's taking the perception as the observer, stepping back, realizing that I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my sensation, but I'm this inner witness, this loving observer that perceive and experience all these types of impact. So we are in some way now forced to rethink our life. And stepping back from what we used to do, and now we have a moment where we can start contemplating, okay, what is it for a life that I'm actually in a deeper sense wants to live? What is my deeper values? Is it necessary for me to be attached to all the things in my life, or can I let go of something so I can use more energy on whatever, my children, my coworkers, or whatever? So it is a big experiment in disidentification from all the strings that we have of attachment to work, to life that has to be normal in a sense. And of course we face the fear of the unknown then, and this we just need to hold and be with, and listen to this deeper voice within.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the fear, it's so interesting because there's so much fear that's arising right now, and a lot of it is centered around the feeling of uncertainty, the feeling that we don't know what's going to happen next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I don't feel like it's not, the uncertainty is not really the problem. It's the way we think about our relationship to the uncertainty. So to make that distinction for all of us. So if you're sitting here, you're listening right now and you're saying, well, I have a lot of fear. I don't know what's going to happen next. And that makes me feel afraid and all of this. The invitation here is to actually look at the thinking about the uncertainty, because first of all, life is filled with uncertainty, right? And we don't know what's going to happen next, but the problem's not the uncertainty. The problem is believing that we can't handle it, or we don't have the capacity to hold it, right? So there could be this part of us that says, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. I don't think I'm capable of handling this. Like all of that those inner thoughts that come from, our subpersonalities or our wounded parts that just don't think that we have the capacity. And so I feel like really called to say this, which is that we all have within us the capacity to hold, and in everything that we're given, we are whole, we are resourceful, we are capable, and this is what we know. We know this inside of ourselves. The deep part of us knows that we are capable, we are creative. Who we are is the intelligence of the universe. Call it whatever you want. That is ultimately who we are. And when we're able to disidentify, Ken, as you were speaking so beautifully to, and come back into our sense of home, our sense of center, we have access to our creativity, our resourcefulness. No matter what life presents us, or we present ourselves as life, we are invited to step into ourselves more deeply. What am I capable of? So change that question to, what's going to happen next, to what's going to happen next? What can I create from this space? What is life asking of me right now? What wants to emerge for me in my life right now? Where's my pivot? And my pivot could very well be like, what are the needs of the world? And what are the gifts that I have to meet the needs of the world through me? So just coming back into like, what is it that we're thinking about the situation, and inviting us into a deeper sense of resourcefulness, wholeness, and creativity moment, and seeing what's there if we come back to that centered space and allow what wants to come through. Because we only have clarity when we move ourselves out of suffering and into a deeper sense of self, right? That space, that powerful state, that allows us to open up to clarity and creativity.
But you were also speaking about the dark night of the soul, and I like that concept. And while you were speaking, it was also like came into connection with death because there's some death around the situation right now. People is dying from this virus. So some people will experience loss. But it can also be loss of economic opportunities. And this is also a kind of death, death of the way the life was used to be. So there's some dramatic event unfolding right now where the old self, the old world is about to break down. I don't know how much it will break down, but we can certainly see that something is breaking down right now, and nobody really understands what the consequences economically, socially will be afterwards. And so we have this death energy coming through this crisis. And the death energy is about, letting go of old identifications, letting go of the old life, and experiencing that we can actually manage death if we are aware about what is going on. And so I think it's so important to really realize the kind of pain some people will go through if they lose some of their loved ones, or if they lose a lot of economic, some will lose companies, some will lose their job, their livelihood. So there's a lot of at stake here, and particularly what I would call the economic self. The economic self inside of us is the part of us who are very identified with material things, with money, and with all the modern materialistic worldview. And I think there's something to learn with this type of death experience here. I don't know yet what it is, but perhaps there will come a new type of economy out of it. Perhaps there will come out a new type of values, perhaps a more simple living. What do you think?
I think that evolution happens under the greatest amount of pressure.
Exactly.
And we're in it. One of my beautiful mentors, her name is Joanna Macy. And she's a deep ecologist, Buddhist scholar, system scholar, beautiful elder. And she and others in this work, the ecotherapy work, we're calling this time the great unraveling, making way for the great turning, right? So the great unraveling and the great turning, movement, right? Turning toward ourselves, turning toward ourself, turning toward each other. And in order for that to happen, these old systems must crumble away. And so as we move through this unraveling, there's inevitable death. And the universe needs death, right? Death and birth, right? This cataclysm, like all this, there's always a movement of emergence and death. And it is, when we look at it from a larger systems perspective, it's inevitable, like it needs to happen. And that doesn't mean take it easy, in a sense, like it doesn't, not going to be hard to sit with, because there's something called positive disintegration, and it's this time where the systems that we know and that we rely on and our identifications with these current normal systems to crumble apart. And when that happens, we're kind of left sitting in chaos, confusion, uncertainty. We have no idea what the next step is. It's like being in a very thick fog that you can only see, like a foot in front of you. But every time you take a step, you can see a little more, and you can see a little more, and that as you keep stepping, you're going to see more. You're always going to see what's next. So there's a bit of faith and a bit of trust that comes into this play. And there's also knowing that what emerges from this, it's called positive disintegration, because as things disintegrate and fall apart, what emerges
Mm.
is, let's say, a more aligned version of ourselves, a more whole experience of ourselves as a collective as well.
Mm.
You know, like sort of the next level, the ideal. It's like stepping into the
Mm.
ideal model, right?
Exactly.
We want to create for society and for
Mm.
our lives, right? So we have to give death, as hard as it is, to peel. I'm thinking right now, like a snake, you know, and like needing to shed its skin, and like the painful process, perhaps, of like peeling off
Mm.
skin that is not comfortable, but we have to do it in order to expand to the next level of our being.
Mm.
And so that's what I think about what's happening right now. And so we have to also be present to the pain that's here. That's
Mm.
very important. I'm not saying, you know, well, it's just a gift. No. It's like, this is real. We feel this. Let's feel it.
Mm.
Let's feel it with some perspective. Let's feel it with some groundedness and clarity, you know, and awareness of a larger picture at the same time
Mm.
that whatever it is we're experiencing and we're holding.
I really like what you're saying, and a relevant question could be to ask the question: how can I participate in this transformation that we are witnessing? Because we are witnessing this this death of an old thought form, and I think it's a concept that Assagioli uses is also that we go from mass consciousness to individual consciousness to group consciousness to universal consciousness. And group consciousness is about the soul, the natural way the soul sees the world. And group consciousness, there's only one group, and that's humanity and all the species on the planet. So I think we are about to learn something about group consciousness, and that it's not a possibility to come through this alone. It's not just an individual project. No, it's a collective. It's a group progress. It's a group evolution. So I think in order for having the right perception, getting the right type of inspiration, it's very important for people to come together, to listen together, to meditate together, to hold space together in order for new realizations and new insights to come through about what's the evolutionary purpose behind this this crisis we are facing right now. So it's in some way it's awakening. It's an awakening to a group consciousness, and of course there's a paradox. Of course, we will always have an individual purpose. There will always be something unique we have to give to the collective, but we will always have to listen and understand what it is in a group perspective, because we are not separated atoms. We are part of this network of light. So what do you think about that?
Yeah. I love you throw it up. What do you think about that? No, I think that that's beautifully said. And it's bringing to my awareness a quote that I love from Tom Yeomans.
Mm.
And I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it, you know, accessible at the moment, but something to the effect of the more we understand our oneness with life, the collective, right, that consciousness, the more we become ourselves, the more we understand our unique way of showing up. You know, it's so much so that we are so interconnected and interdependent with life, and the outer world informs the inner world, and the inner world informs the outer world, you know. And so we know that even as the more we understand our wholeness, I think the more confidence and courage we have within us to become ourselves more fully. And every single one of us is so unique. We all have something powerful and unique to offer this world. You know, no two creatures are alike. No two people have a fingerprint, right? The stripes on every zebra pattern is completely different. Like every species is unique by design. Whatever this divine mystery is that we are, is every single one of us is a unique expression of it, of that. And so it's so important that as we tune into the group consciousness and we gather ourselves together and we allow the magic of synergy, which is two or more things coming together, creating something larger than their individual parts, right? Happening right now. But as it creates something larger, it also informs each piece of that collective.
Exactly.
Right? To be stronger. And so that's how we continue to evolve. That's evolution. That is evolution, baby. Like that's it all right here. Like that's what's going on. And I think that we are on the cusp of something really powerful right now. And it is up to each one of us, every single one of you listening right now, it's up to you to take the time to tune into what wants to come through and ask yourself, how can I show up more fully as myself right now? How can I contribute more fully to the whole? And how is the whole informing my deeper sense of self? I think that's a question I'll sit with right now.
And in order to enter this new stream, this new type of consciousness, there is some kind of a death that we must go through. That's part of the journey. Yes. And so there's this breaking down within a cycle where we are able to build things, a new identity up. But it's in some way it's a mesh. There can be some chaotic elements in that process where from being divided within to becoming whole, if that's the process. Psychosynthesis means sometimes we speak about psychosynthesis with a capital P. That's the psychology. That's what we do. And then there's psychosynthesis with a smaller p, and that's the evolutionary process. So what we are working with is a process through wholeness. And we are on a journey toward more and more wholeness. And in order for that to happen, we need to collect all these fragments of ourselves, all these voices that we haven't listened to. And this is exactly how modern life functions. As you said, we have been trained to run away from our better angels in some way, because we're afraid of what's the consequences if I'm starting to listen to this deeper inner voice. The consequence is death. And but not doing anything is meaningless and despair at some point, because we cannot go on upholding an old outworn form, an old identity that's not authentic. There's something in it that just naturally break it down. And that's the evolutionary force that all of us is riding on, or actually we are this evolutionary force.
That's so important what you just said. It's so important what you just said. Look, this is it right here. Like, this is the heart of it all. We have a dysfunctional society. Okay, it is not normal. There's nothing normal about, mass extinction, starvation, pollution, poison, cancer. This is not okay. The way we are proceeding, business as usual, cannot continue, right? This experience, as hard as it might be for some of us that are holding this, is also an incredible opportunity, an incredible invitation for us to not go back to business as usual. That is killing us, killing our planet. We're killing the opportunity for our children and their children. Like, we are destroying ourselves as a whole. That is going on here. And so when we say, God, I just want, my business to continue as it was and everything to go back to normal, let's be careful with that, because it's really uncomfortable to take a bold new step right now. It might be really uncomfortable to uproot the way you've been doing things, and you may not know what that next step looks like, but the invitation for us right now is to center into what it could possibly look like that would allow us to be more human, to be more ourselves, to be more honest and authentic and real about who we are and how we're showing up in this world. What is your life for? You are not here to just make money and die. I'm sorry. We are so sucked into this consumer society. We have to read into what's really real right now. And this pause is an opportunity for us to do that. We can use it and make some changes that, you know, could completely shift the way we're showing up in the world and be like radical, you know, or we could just really, really fight to go back to these draconian ways that we see like these so-called leaders trying to uphold. It's crazy. Like in the midst of this, they're still thinking economy first, economy, like money over everything. Like it's still this old paradigm. How can we create our world? What do we want to imagine that's not this post-apocalyptic doom and gloom scenario that we see in books and in movies and in everything that's like shoved into our psyche right now? We have an opportunity to reimagine a new way of being in a new world right now. This is it. What do we want to see for ourselves? What do we want to see for our lives, for our you know, our world, for our children and our grandchildren? You know, we get to choose that, guys. We really get to choose that. We're not a slave unless we forget all of this and just go right back to the trance, right? The whole world is shaken out of this trance right now, right? So what are we going to do with it? Let's not go back into it. Let's like make some new choices. So here it is, right here. See it? I feel very passionate about this moment.
I can feel it.
But yeah.
But you know, in some way, it started to become very quiet in me. You know, it was like some kind of a silence. When you spoke, it was like, you know, clearing the table so we can pause and not panic and envision a new life. And I'm absolutely aware that it's a big deal to change the life and the habits, but there's no way around it. It's like this crisis in some way is, we have for now a couple of years now, there's have been a big movement regarding the climate crisis. You know, more and more people demand solutions, and the system is very, very, very slow to respond to this call. But as I see it, this big movement, worldwide movement of a demand of cleaner energy, in some way could invoke a situation like this, some kind of synchronicity that, you know, there's such a deep felt wish in humanity about clean water, a clean planet, welfare for the animals and all the other kingdoms. So in some way, I think our wishes and the demand, the collective call and the collective demand has, I'm not saying that this call has caused the virus, but I'm saying there is some kind of synchronicity. I think it's so amazing that the planet can breathe right now because we have been stopped in our activity. And it's really worthwhile thinking about, do we need all this activity? And why do we need all this activity? It's like activity. We are surrounding ourselves with so much noise, so we cannot hear the signal from the soul. That's the problem.
Yes, yes to everything you just said, Ken. That was really articulated so beautifully, you know, and I keep thinking call of self. And like, you know, a lot of times I think so many, you know, we focus on our self, you know, our personal self, our call of self, and how am I showing up? And it's still a me. And we're so much invited into the we. And so what is the call of the funny enough, the call of the ecological self, the call of the larger collective self right now, you know, and humanity as a whole, imagine us as like one organism, you know, living out our
Mm,
sub-personalities, being at all, and then all of a sudden, like we're facing this dark night, and we're invited, and the call of self wants to come through. It's trying
mm.
hard to emerge and to
But
engage.
could you say something about what is your call about? I think there's some of the viewers out there would like to hear you express how you live your call.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really clear on my call,
Mm,
and it's very much about helping us remember who we are.
mm,
And when I say that, I mean not just on a personal level, like on an individual level, but also in an evolutionary sense. You know, as this intelligence of the universe, as this great mystery, like remembering who we are in the deepest and largest context as well, so that we can fully align the way we live our lives with who we know we are. And I
mm,
believe if we all do this individually, we create a transformation in our world.
mm,
So in one way, I'm in the, you know, I'm here to help us remember very profoundly on those levels. And another thing I've been kind of joking around about lately is I'm like,
mm,
the business of building resilience, you know, because what very much what it is, and it kind of comes back to what we were speaking of earlier, of knowing that whatever it is
mm,
that we're facing, we can move through this. We can hold this. We can do this together. We're meant to. We're here. It wouldn't be happening if it wasn't in some way supposed to be, because it's moving us and guiding us and showing us what we're made of. And
mm,
so, you know, very much it's about how do we take in what the experience it is right now and come forward, you know, step forward even stronger than we were
mm,
before. And that's what resilience really is, right?
mm,
It's like having the experience and then coming back stronger, being
mm,
so resilient that no matter what it is that we're experiencing right now, we know without a doubt that we can move through this together.
mm. Could you give some specific? I know you're having, you know, your coaching institute, but you're involved in so many different things. So, how do you express, you know, this call in practical activities?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like working with people, you know, I do run, I have a 9 month, it's a coach training and leadership course. And in that course, you know, not only are we diving into psychosynthesis, but we also look at, you know, I'm kind of an armchair cosmologist, if you will,
Mm,
you know, like cosmology, the story of our time, and especially the universe story, the scientific story of our time right now I'm very passionate about that. And so I bring those teachings into the work that we do in a very experiential way. So I was speaking of Joanna Macy earlier, one of my mentors. She created a body of work called The Work That Reconnects.
mm,
And so much about like despair and empowerment. Like, how do we hold the pain of our world and transmute that into active hope,
mm,
right? Hope
mm,
as a verb. Like, how do we take action on what it is that we're learning about ourselves? And so I work with people. I do a lot of group work,
mm.
which of course is being affected right now as far as like being in person. But I do also do a lot of work online. And
Yeah.
so I do group work where I invite us to, there's so many beautiful exercises that invite us to feel into ourselves as, you know, as earth, or to be with through different rituals and experience.
Mm, mm,
You know, one of them that comes from this body of work is called the Truth Mandala, and it's this beautiful ritual where we create a circle and we put the four sacred items in the circle, and it's a quadrant, and so each quadrant has an item. And so one of the quadrants represents fear, for instance,
mm,
and there's a stone, and that stone represents how our hearts become contracted when we're in fear, and we aren't able to really move, right? And what we do is we allow ourselves to be with the experience of fear, and at the same time hold the flip side of that, which is our courage.
mm,
Be with that, right?
mm,
And the other quadrant would hold our grief,
mm,
and we go in there and we have dry leaves, and we can be with those leaves as a symbol for our grief, and know that we only grieve for what we love. And so
mm,
by experiencing our grief, we ultimately tune into a deeper experience of love for our world,
mm,
right? And then we may tune into our anger, which would be the stick. And in that we hold, our righteous anger that's arising right now for what's happening in our world. And it's really our passion for justice,
mm,
knowing that something new needs to arise and what's going on is not okay. And it's okay to feel angry about that, and like allow that righteous anger to be a tool that moves us into our love and our action from our love for what's
mm, mm,
righteous, feels like truth. And then the fourth quadrant is this empty bowl that represents a sense of hopelessness,
mm,
which I think a lot of us are sitting with too right now. So
mm,
this is relevant. And then in that space, we also allow ourselves to become a vessel, to
mm,
be filled with what wants to emerge, the transpersonal qualities that want to be infused into our personal self and be lived into the world,
mm,
right? So it's this beautiful ritual, and one at a time people come in and they sit with what's there and express it and feel it in whatever way feels honest, or it could even be in silence, or it could be
mm,
through tears, or it could be through a song, and then we hold each other collectively in
mm,
that experience of expressing what's here and coming through to the other side and coming back together in our love for life, for ourselves, for our world, for what's possible,
mm,
right? So there's an expression of one beautiful exercise that I
mm,
love to hold people through. It's very powerful.
mm,
So those are some of the ways that I work with people, in this and through this.
mm. Exactly. And in this way, you will also give them the tools to come through times like this, because I think this is actually what the time is calling us to do. It's wake up, wake up to the essence of who we are. And your work is very related to what I'm doing too. I have a big love for meditation and everything that is related to how to recognize ourselves, how to transform ourselves, and how to be powerful and influential in our life, because we are here to manifest the deeper being of our soul. So, I think perhaps also this is some of the most important gift we can give right now is to help people realize that they are not the body, they are not their possessions, they are not the emotional stage, they are not all the thoughts in the head. No, they are a loving observer, and from this point of pure awareness, if we really can practice this, we start to be able to manage ourselves, manage all the conflicting inner voices, all the stress and all the influences. And I think we have put so much emphasis about controlling the outer environment and forgetting that we really need to control or master, I would rather say, the inner environment of all the influences that we perceive in on a daily basis, because this is the only way that each and every of us can really find that inner voice who is the. It's actually funny because we call it the call of self, but we are the one who calls. You
Yes, we got
know,
calls.
the the deeper self, which is us, is calling us to show up, to express our deeper identity. And of course, this is a lifelong journey, but it's so important right now because this awakening now is a group awakening. So it's so important that people are coming together and we share our skills and our understanding of what is going on a global scale, but also how can I facilitate that growth and that change and that in some way revolution that we are about to go through, and come out on the other side more resilient, as you said, and more powerful, more loving than before. That's the challenge. So we need, guides who in some way can walk walk the walk and go through this with an open eye and a big heart and skills to manage all this conflict that we experience in the world, because there's so much conflict, there's so much opposing forces within the politics and many places. So, and psychosynthesis is all about resolving those conflicts, harmonizing them, blending them, and the big I would like to say awareness, love, and will is the triangle that managed to bring all this together in a beautiful synthesis. So yeah, this is what we are here to offer in some way. And of course, many other people are doing great stuff, doctors, politicians, journalists. There are so many ways of participating in this now I use the word revolution because perhaps in some way it is a revolution that we are in right now.
Yeah, an evolution revolution.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Is there any concluding things you would like to offer to our viewers before we close this conversation?
Yeah, as you were just speaking right now, and first, I really want to honor you, Ken, and your incredible work. Your beautiful books, and you're such I think, in so many ways, a pioneer. In the work of psychosynthesis. So I really want to honor you and appreciate you for your voice and leadership in our world. And I feel very much that this is about how are we leading ourselves, how are we leading our lives, and as you were saying, like, it's mastering this inner world, or really becoming more aware, shining a light on the unconscious parts of us and making them more conscious. So we can make decisions that really align with who we are. And by doing that, we show up as leaders in our world, both in small and large ways. And that feels really important. And what else was coming through as you were speaking was, we say, in coaching is 80% listening, right? I want to actually bring that into our lives and say, our lives could be 80% listening. What would that look like to spend more time listening to what's happening inside of us, to what's happening around us? So really, it's like, we don't always know what we think and feel until we articulate it or write it, or share it with somebody, like having a guide, a coach, someone like that with you, or a good friend, in some really listening to what wants to come through, what wants to emerge in you right now, because there's a reason why this is happening for us right now in the way that it's happening globally, right? In the beginning, this is no mistake. There are no accidents, right? Nature is perfect. When you look into a forest, everything is perfect. So if we look at life like that and say, what about this is here for us right now? It will invite us to see this from a much more profound perspective that can completely transform the way we show up in our lives and the way we show up in our world. I think that's the great invitation of this moment.
If you should give our listeners 3 short advice of how to navigate this crisis, what would it be if you just spontaneously...
So advice on how to move through the crisis?
Yes.
Advice on how to move through the crisis. I mean, goodness, I feel like we've touched on a lot
of things. It's the essential.
So here it is. First, presence.
Yes.
Allow yourself to become present with what is. Right? This is the revolutionary act in of itself. Right? Presence brings us to gratitude for the moment. And we live in a world of more, better, faster now. We need to have things to feel good and feel whole. Presence. You have everything you need inside of you. Everything you need to navigate through this moment is here. Become present to that. Become present to what's happening in our world on a larger level. Hear and see and experience things right now, both through the personal experience of what it is, and simultaneously, don't forget to hold it as a loving observer. Most importantly, so be with it and know that I'm experiencing this, and who I am is so much more than this. How am I also holding the experience of this as the one who's noticing? Okay, those are some really important things there. And the third thing I would say is we are not alone in our isolation.
Beautiful.
We're all here together.
Beautiful. It has been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you, Val. Thank you for showing up, and I'm looking forward for another episode somewhere in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, this feels so important right now. So I'm grateful we can hold this space for us and for everyone listening.
Yeah, and we will also, to all the viewers out there, we will say thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it, and light your light in the world. We need you. So thank you from us to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.